until actually this month even, we have been doing pretty much one-on-one, right? One-on-one coaching, which
Right.
is really great and effective, where a client would reach out to me. And usually it's important. There's two ways that a client will come by. One is they have a money issue, and like the money is not what they wanted. There's always a financial struggle. And then I get brought in because that's my background. And for me, the financial struggle is usually a symptom of an operational or even a strategy problem.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Ana Chaud from The Ideal Life. And today we'll be diving into her story as well as what it is her company does, and then, as always, some engaging insights into the technology industry. So make sure to stick around for this one. But without further ado, Anna, welcome. Thanks for hopping on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Anna, if we could start, if you could kindly just provide us a bit around your background, please.
Yeah. So my background is, as you see later on, what led to the company today, which is the diversity and the variety of the things I've done in my past, which was not linear whatsoever, but it was really, really rich and really great on the way that I designed it. So I started my career in San Francisco. My background was CFO, COO, and I always worked with founders and leadership teams to help them with operation, streamlining, and financial management. So I did that for about 12 years in the Bay Area. And when I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I decided that I wanted something completely new. So I was still doing some of that, but I decided to step in the shoes of a founder. So I started my first company then. And I started one company and another company, two in the same year, which I don't recommend. But I ended up taking one of them from concept to acquisition. So in the period of 5 years, I had a startup where I went through the entire life cycle of a startup, which
Yeah.
included rounds of fundraising and negotiating my exit and working with investors boards, and then learning how to grow it and scale it and to manage it, the whole thing. So after my acquisition, which happened in 2019, I went back to working again with founders and leadership teams. But this time with the experience of a founder myself. So it was different. I had a completely different perspective. And during that time, I started to notice there was a big disconnect in my clients. One thing that I noticed is I was doing the exact same thing that I did back in San Francisco, which is helping these companies grow and become more profitable and run better, right?
Right.
So that was great, except that I started noticing that it became one of those habits of founders that they want to do, keep going and growing, but not really connecting what they were doing to their person. Okay, so then after my during my post acquisition, when I was working with founders and leadership teams, what I noticed was these founders had no problem hitting business goals, right? They're bringing me in to help them with the strategy and execution, and that was all great, and we would be able to take them to the next level. But one thing I noticed is that there was a disconnect between their businesses and how they grew it and all that they invested in it, and then their personal lives and what they were feeling and what they were living. Um, what I started to notice was that every time I asked them what they wanted personally,
Yeah.
that business strategy was not going to be able to support it. And that's when I started to question it a little bit. And I thought, there's something here because, every they tell me they want this in the personal life, how much time they want to spend with their families and how much travel they want to do and all the things that they want. But then when we were working in business strategy, I would say, hey, do you realize that this is not going to be able to support what you want personally? But no, normally doesn't go that way, because as
Yeah,
business
yeah,
owners,
you're
we
right.
believe, we have to go to the next step and the next step, and
Yeah,
that's going to bring us whatever it is that we're looking for. So I started doing a lot of research on what was the motivation for people to have their own business, what was the motivation for people to be in leadership, what is that was driving them. And we can go in detail later if you want, but I found out that there were some elements that they were seeking in their businesses that they perceived it was going to bring them to what they wanted personally, but it never happened. So for 4 years, I started to focus on that, and it started to shift my approach with my clients. So instead of just coming in and doing my traditional work,
yeah,
I would go in and start working with them on the personal goals first. And then once we had that nailed, we would come back to the business strategy and see how that would align with that. And honestly, because I felt that, especially my age group and people that were in my community, it gets to a point that why are we doing all this for, right? If you're not
yeah,
doing all that to support some personal goals, then why are we doing it? And that
yeah,
was very well received. And it was during that time that I met Elliot Weisskall, who was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and he and I were working in the same space and same clients, started same things we were doing. And then we
mm,
started we became colleagues. We're sharing resources, we're sharing ideas, we're sharing new ways of approaching our businesses. And then we realized we had very similar challenges. Our clients were having the same issues. So Elliot came to me and said, I created a framework
mm,
to help these founders figure out what they want. Because this is one thing I noticed too, Treg, is most people don't know what they want, right? It's very
yeah,
normal. So he had created this framework, and I was curious about it. So he said, hey, do you want to experience it yourself and see how it would be for you? And so I did. I went into one of his virtual cohorts, and I was mesmerized. It was a way that helped even me, like I've been doing this work forever, but it was a way
yeah,
for me to figure out what I wanted, what was it that I was looking for. But I think the most important was for me to actually put it in writing, which is much harder than you think when you try to commit to something you want for yourself, right? So, anyways, I loved the program, and I thought, hey, Elliot, this would be great, for my clients as well. I've been doing this a little bit more fluidly, but this is a great thing. My clients would love to have a framework. So that's how the Ideal Life was born. So Elliot and I decided to create this company together, where we work with leaders and founders and people who are looking to do a life design,
yeah,
and but either have they don't have the idea of how to get about it, or they
yeah,
don't know how to make it happen. Like, you can create something, but how do you get it off the ground? So we use a very similar approach that we'd use with a business strategy, because these clients all know how it is to establish a strategy for the business and get it off the ground, and hit their goals in the business world. They put all the effort in the business world. So
yes.
we do something similar in the personal side, and it resonates with that type of personality and type of clients. Yeah.
Goodness, this is so interesting.
Thank
I
you.
must say, it's so
So much to
interesting.
talk about. Yes.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things you mentioned that it's a lot of things that like the unsaid. When it comes to business founders and questions that you said, that's or discussions rather that usually do not take place. And if
Correct.
and there's so many I know just from our company point of view, from our clients that we have that have told me that what there is, I don't know if I want to do this, maybe I should sell it. I
Yes.
just
Yes.
this just happened automatically. I started out in my father's garage, or and then it just grew, and now I've got kids and I'm stuck in it, or those type of conversations. And
Hmm.
so that's why this is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I
Tell me,
know.
if you don't mind, I think maybe from an approach point of view, in like when you talk to a business founder, for just the listeners to better understand if they want to like reach out to you in the sense of what the basic process will be, just like not obviously just from a high level point of view, but what is it
Hmm.
from the type of thing that you guys assist with? If you can just don't mind to elaborate a bit more on that.
Sure. So until now, until actually this month even, we have been doing pretty much one-on-one, right? One-on-one coaching, which
Right, right.
is really great and effective, where a client would reach out to me, and usually it's important. There's two ways that a client will come by. One is they have a money issue, and like the money is not what they wanted. There's always a financial struggle, and then I get brought in because that's my background, and for me the financial struggle is usually a symptom of an operational or even a strategy problem.
Yeah, good point.
So I usually come in, I address that, but then I bring back to what really where the gap is, and we usually end up in strategy, and this strategy these days, I usually design, as I mentioned sooner earlier, which is I design it based on what they want personally.
Yeah,
So we have been doing that one-on-one, but
yeah,
with Elliot's framework, we found a better way to make this a little quicker in terms of trying to absorb the information and provide the same support without having to go months on in a one-on-one
okay.
system. So we now do the Ideal Life Way, which is the program, in two formats. We do it virtual cohorts, so it's a 3-month process,
Yeah,
or we do it what we call it immersive, which is we take our clients to a location where it's usually remote enough, so it's usually it could be a resort where there's not a lot of people. And then we bring them in for about a week, and we do deep work there, and then they can get away from their day to day. They can really immerse, and then they get out of the program with a lot of clarity is what they want personally. And remember, work and professional career is one dimension of your life. So when you get out of the program, you
mm,
also know what you want for your business, but you just incorporate all the other dimensions. And then when you come out of the program, we give them a year's support to implement it, to make sure that they're not just putting that in a drawer and forgetting about it, that we actually, we're tracking the tools and the resources to make sure that they are incorporating that into day to day. We provide support that way. So that's what we're doing now with the group programs. We still do one-on-one, which I love. It's a little bit more, expensive. So we try to figure out a way to do
yeah,
it a lot easier. And then get also, because I feel, Treg, that if you have a group of people who are in the same, if it's a peer group, right? If I'm going to an event and everybody in that group is curated to be
mm,
peers of mine, I end up getting a lot more benefit
yeah,
because now I'm sharing with people.
yeah.
So we curate a group that is usually aligned
Mm.
and making sure that everyone's sort of like in the same situation. So it makes it easier to collaborate and get better results.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm
Yeah.
just, thinking now what you mentioned, especially with these other things that you mentioned with your partner, with Elliot, on these types of programs. I'm sure that helps as a lot, looking a bit more inward towards your business now. Um,
Hmm.
from a scalability point of view, that assists quite a bit, right? What it would,
Hmm.
to do that.
Yes,
Then, like you mentioned, from doing that one-on-one, because there's only so many days and so many hours,
exactly.
obviously,
Yeah.
obviously to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, can you possibly give me an example of where, obviously not to mention maybe the business or the person, but mention where there's somebody that you've assisted, that there was like just this radical change that took place, right? Do you maybe have an
Oh
example
gosh.
example like
Oh, I
that for
have a
us?
ton of examples.
But
Okay,
give me one
so
of the top three.
the one of the top three. So, okay, so without mentioning names, of course. So there are different walks of life, right? I think I have two big examples that come to life. One was a client who owned a wholesale catering company. It's hard to explain more than that, but he had large accounts
Yeah.
and basically served the majority of the sports stadiums and universities and a lot of that. So catering it's more of like it's not it's catering for corporations, so it's a little bit more it's an intricate complex. I have background in food and beverage, so it was easy to help. But the issue there was what I described earlier, so I was brought in because of this discomfort and the financial piece and the strategy and all that. And when we started working together, he had no assistants, no number two in command. I mean, he was trying to do everything. He was doing anything from calling the credit card company to fight an interest charge that was wrong, all the way to talking to the kitchen. It was just like there was no operation or nothing, right? So my expertise would have been to come in the past. I would come in, we would talk about strategy, we would discuss, who we're going to put in place, how do we hire new people. I would have done all that, which I did. But before I did that, I had to work with him on what did he want for him personally? Because the first meeting we had,
Yeah.
I asked, what do you want for this business? And he gave me a number. I'm going to just say hypothetically, let's say he was making 2 million a year. He gave me a number. I said, what do you want? He said, I want to grow to 10 million a year in 5 years. Let's say he gave me some goal financially. Okay. So I said, okay, so if we discuss what that would entail, right? What would it entail to get to that? What would it be in terms of scalability first, and then what would it be in terms of growth? Because we do a financial planning, like how much money we have to raise, and there's a whole thing. But when I
Right.
started talking about his personal goals, he starts to tell me that in 3 years, he wanted to move to Hawaii and he wanted to do this and he wanted to do that. So that's when I was going, but look, this what you want and how for us to create that and for you to be able to do that, we have to either have you let go of this position and bring in another CEO, and then we figure out a solution for you to be able to move away. But if you are going to oversee this growth all the way through the amount of money we're talking about and having that, you're not going to be able to go and live in Hawaii and work 2 hours a day. So, right, so we got to have to figure out. I'm not saying it's impossible to do that to the business. What I'm saying is, what are the choices you're going to have to make in order to create that personal vision? Or are you going to defer that personal vision? Now,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is where things get a little complicated. Most people
Right.
defer that personal vision until there is some sort of a scare, right? Now they're sick. Now someone else they love is gone. There's something that
Like a
pulls them and
yeah,
say that
a trigger event kind of setup that tends to happen, and then suddenly changes takes place, right? Or has
it
to take place.
does. It does. And we don't have
Yeah.
to wait for that wake up call. So that's one example. A second example I have was a client who, very successful woman, had hit like the company was at the peak, but she was at a place where she's in her mid 60s and she was thinking what was next for her, because she was being the leader of that company. It's amazing what she had created, but when was it going to be the time for her to think about what was next?
Yeah.
Now, discussing what's next doesn't necessarily mean you cross the line and you're never going to be in your business again. There's so many ways of designing what that means. It could be that you work 1 day a week. It could be that you don't work in the business anymore, but you're still involved or in the board. Whatever that is, whatever makes it right for you, it's not right for the other. So we really try to tap into what is right for you, because when I was a CEO, I remember having an identity crisis because it was my first big CEO job, and I didn't know who I was as a leader. So what
Mm.
I noticed was I was looking at the books I had read, and the majority of the books I read of leaders were men. And I was thinking, am I going to become Ben Horowitz, and be a wartime CEO? Because it felt like that most of the time when I was like, if you see if you read the book that he wrote, or so that's when I started to think about what's right for me is not necessarily what's out there. But when we don't know, we tend to emulate the successful people that we admire without knowing if that's who we are. So
Yeah.
this self-discovery is very important, not just for you to live the life you want, but for you to become a better leader, right? If I
Right.
know who I am and I'm acting from a place of authenticity as a leader,
Yeah.
you, as my team, are going to benefit from that than having me try to become a leader that I'm not, right? And I think
Right.
that's part of what this work is about. Does that make
This
sense?
this is so profound. Tell me, yo, this is excellent. Tell me
Thank you.
the what's on what's on the cards for you in 2025 for the business. So what's on the
Yeah.
horizon? What's on the horizon this year?
So this year, which is our year of launching the programs, we have
Yep.
about 7 of our immersives lined up and about 6 of our virtual programs lined up, which we want to really create a community of leaders and executives who are serious about living the life that they want to and not deferring any longer. That's important to me. That's important to my
Wow.
partner. So for us, it would be to even start I think for us, success this year is going to be if we can get the people that come through our program to feel motivated and inspired to really live that life, and we can see a difference in that. I
Yeah.
believe it's going to be a really successful year. I think that is I had those micro moments with clients, the one that I was telling you about, the catering wholesale, when he was able to get out of the minutia and establish a leadership team. And one day he calls me, he says, I have so much time right now that I actually picked up a hobby. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's the best thing I could have heard. Like when I met him, he had no time for anything.
For
So
anything.
just understanding how people's lives can change. He
Yeah.
became a much better husband, right? He became a much better son. Everybody now had quality time with him. So we believe in this ripple effect. And I think what Elliot and I, we agree on and we align is that if we can impact the life of the leader, by
Yes.
default and by ripple, we are impact the life of so many. Because I always say the wellness of the organization depends on the wellness of the leader, right? If your leader is somebody that's not trustworthy, then the entire team is not going to be trustworthy. If the leader is, autocrat, like a dictator type, screams at everybody, you believe the culture is going to be that way too. So having a leader who is comfortable and confident in who they are is going to impact the others, and then it's going to ripple out to the team. So we think that that is a way of reaching out to a lot of people as well.
Wow, that is great.
Thank
Anna,
you.
I need to first off, I fully understand why you guys are so successful the way you are. The value that you guys bring to the table, not just obviously in from business talk, B2C or B2B. I'm not talking about person, but just from bringing to the table in general. And I think the approach that you guys have taken and what you're doing is I used the word profound earlier, and I'm using it again. So I want to
Thank you.
commend you. It is I wish you all the best going forward for 2025.
Thank
And
you.
I think there's a lot of people that made some notes, and I think there's a lot of people that might be a bit quiet after this podcast and just maybe think a bit. So, having said
Mm-hmm.
that, where can where can the listeners, Anna, get hold of you guys?
Yeah, so my name, and obviously on LinkedIn, is a really great way to get a hold of me personally. But if they want to visit our website, it's livetheIdeal.life. So it's basically just the sentence, live the ideal life, but it's livetheIdeal.life. And then that explains a lot of what we do, where our programs are, when, what's where. We have an immersive coming up in April, which is going to be in this beautiful location in Mexico. We found this incredible venue where there's only very limited amount of villas, so each person gets their own villa. They have the time to really do the work. Even though we are going to locations that are nice and beautiful, the idea is to provide the setting for somebody to do deep work and come out of there with what they're looking for. So yeah, and then we have others coming up, but anybody can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. And I'm usually pretty good responding. And yeah, I think that would be it for now.
Lovely. Anna, thank you for your insights. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. All the best. Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.